see why she'd be willing to adopt him, right?
In a heartbeat.
Hey, by a show of hands, who was born an American citizen? Now, I feel like I wake up every day and I'm a pretty damn good patriot. How many of you agree with that you're a good patriot? How many of you feel a little inadequate right now because you were born into that privilege and you didn't have to earn it? Whenever I listen to someone like Eric, it brings me back, it checks me. Because he had to earn the privileges that all of us were born with. It's kind of an honor to be able to sit on the side of the stage and just listen. And when I told you that he joined us on the air 3 weeks ago, a month ago, we were kind of silent. And we applauded and we had some fun with him and we cheered him on, but for the most part, he just kind of stopped us in our tracks and made us think. The next speaker that we're going to bring up here, we had scheduled to appear on our show. And then she got sick, and she couldn't appear. And then time ran out, and now here we are. So I'm pretty excited about the ability to be able to sit on the side of that stage, keep my mouth shut and listen, because this story is going to be quite amazing.
Well, first of all, she had COVID, and basically the hospital sort of, in my opinion, didn't do what they could have done. But thank God she's pulled through. Eliana Brooks is a founding board member of Warrior Bride Ministries, a 15-year victim of child sex trafficking and abuse. Eliana miraculously escaped the bonds of her captors and her abusers. She specializes in rehabilitation of child sex trafficking victims under the age of 12. She's an expert in childhood sexual exploitation and satanic ritual abuse. Eliana's passion is to see these children healed and whole with the forever families that they deserve. God bless her. This is the foundation of Warrior Bride Ministries. Find her at warriorbrideministries.com to build an inclusive community that is trained to love them and walk with them through rehabilitation. Ladies and gentlemen, Eliana Brooks.
Thank you guys for having me here today. First, on behalf of Warrior Bride Ministries, I'd like to thank Presley for allowing us to be here and to talk to you. I also want to thank Jeff and Sarah Mag for making this event possible for our ministry. We're forever grateful for the seeds that you sow into the work that we do, and you are seriously a blessing to us. Second, I want to make note about my oxygen machine. I actually didn't have COVID. I had pneumonia, and my lung collapsed. So that was fun. So I kind of have a leash that I might trip over. I apologize. And I'm tied to an oxygen concentrator back there. I did have COVID 15 months ago, but this time I had bacterial pneumonia that I probably got from wearing a dirty mask. So if y'all could remember that next time someone asks you to put a mask on. I spent nearly a week in ICU with them trying to vent me and giving me that shot. But thanks to my mom, I am here today because she fought to make sure that I was... So I'm here with my leash, and we're going to talk about a little bit more important topic. My leash actually makes me think about one of the kids that we saw in our office, probably the most memorable. Her name was Belle. I want you to know her name. She was 7 years old. I don't want her to just be another number to you, a statistic. I want you to see her big brown eyes and curls. And she talked all the time about her necklace. She wanted her necklace. She missed her necklace. Can I get her a necklace? 7 years old. You want to know the kicker, though? Her necklace was a dog collar. See, Belle was a child trafficking victim, and she spent the beginning of her life eating on all fours like a dog. My mom taught her how to eat with a fork and spoon, with a dog collar on. She grew up with grown men kicking her like a dog and beating her like a dog, and much worse than you care to imagine. I want you to know her name, to say her name. She was 7 years old. What reason would she have to lie? Let me ask you this. Have you ever Googled child trafficking? Googled. Here are some of the results that you might get on just the first 2 pages. QAnon conspiracy theorists believe in a vast pedophile ring. Is Wayfair trafficking children via overpriced furnishings? This one might be my favorite. The powerful cabal of pedophiles who not only traffic kids for sex, but physically abuse them and even murder them and cannibalize them. Satanic panic. What lies beneath? Tunnels or trafficking? For trafficking or just the subterranean service? It's time to rescue these spaces from conspiracy theories. You see, you have to do a lot of research and digging, try DuckDuckGo, to get some actual statistics or information, which seems kind of odd. Why wouldn't anyone want you to know that 1.2 million kids a year are sold for sex globally? That is slightly more than the entire population of the state of Rhode Island. Child trafficking is a $150 billion a year industry, having surpassed the sale of illegal guns and expected to surpass criminal drugs in 2021. Only 55% of your victims are girls. That means 45% are boys. 300,000 children are sold for sex each year in the U.S. That is the entire city of Lexington, Kentucky, Corpus Christi, Texas, or Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The average age of a victim when they get rescued is 12. However, most indicate that they entered trafficking between 3 or 4 years old. And here's one for you. 60% of the victims come from foster care. Child Protective Services, whose job it is to protect these kids, somehow manages to give 180,000 of them a year to traffickers. The picture on your slide is from a campaign we had in Georgia about 3 years ago that Marty Kemp did. 3,600 kids from the state of Georgia, where we're located, are sold into trafficking each year. That is 76 school buses leaving an elementary school every year. That should be easy information to find, right? But instead you get inundated with this idea that child trafficking is made up for whatever reason. It's a conspiracy. So Belle at 7 is a liar, right? I gave you lots of stats, but let's talk about what a day in the life of a trafficking victim actually looks like. Remember this as we talk about some of these things. The United States State Department says on average, a child can be sold 20 times a day for sex. That is once every 72 minutes, each child. So according to a Reuters report, it takes the average American approximately 76 minutes to get ready in the morning, between coffee, trying on clothes, showering, makeup, etc. During your morning routine, a child can have a sexual encounter with one adult. What's getting ready look like for them, though? I know a little girl. She grew up in a basement with 8 other kids. Her coffee consisted of her brother picking her up to drink out of a leaky pipe. Showering, trying on clothes, and makeup were reserved for special occasions that normally involved lots of men doing bad things, scary occasions. According to Geostat, in Atlanta, 46% of workers have a 2-hour commute to work. Trust me, they don't drive that far. If y'all have driven in Atlanta, you know what I mean. It's all good. But in that 2-hour car ride, in your air-conditioned vehicle, listening to the Cowboy Logic podcast, or maybe the Conservative Business Journal on your Bluetooth radio, a child trafficking victim can have another 2 sexual encounters with an adult in a basement or a trap house on a dirty, blood-stained mattress somewhere. Say on the way to work, you decide to swing by Starbucks. On average, it's a 4.5-minute detour. According to addictionresource.net, that's long enough to shoot a kid up with heroin. You see, some people like to have sex with kids who don't move, don't feel, and some people like viters. It's a personal choice. You get into the office and you work an 8-hour day, 30-minute lunch break, but child trafficking victims' work never clocks out. While you sit at your desk in your ergonomic desk chair with your contoured mouse pad, a child can have another 7 sexual encounters with an adult. I'm using the word encounter to describe this because that's one purchase. How many people? We don't know. Could be one. Maybe you want to go halves with your buddy. Maybe it's a group of you, but it's one purchase. Either way, by the time you end your workday, when you're winding down for the night, it is fully capable that a child has already been sold 10 times that day. But you've had a stressful day. You've dealt with some terrible clients, right? So you go out with friends for drinks for about an hour and a half. According to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, it takes 20 minutes to beat a child in a domestic situation. So while you're having drinks, a child trafficking victim could be beat up to 4 times. And you finally make it home and you plop on the couch to binge watch, say, 3 episodes of Friends. Any Friends fans? Sounds good. That's enough time for 2 more sexual encounters for a child trafficking victim. And according to USA Today, it takes about 42 minutes for the average American to get ready for bed, which is about as much time as it takes to prepare a child for auction. Remember I told you that showering and makeup and pretty clothes means something very bad is going to happen? Auctions, where grown men get to bid on you and take you home as a prize that they've won for a weekend or however long they pay for. I remember this one guy. He bought kids at auctions. His name was Pat. He was Italian. He lived in a big house in the Pocono Mountains. He had 5 kids of his own and a beautiful wife, but he liked the power trip that came from having sex with a little girl. So every couple of months, he'd send his wife and kids to Cancun on a luxury vacation and bid on a little girl at auction. All day long, she got to play in his pool and with his daughter's toys and eat whatever she wanted. He played with her just like he did his daughters. And then at night, he'd dress her up in some women's lingerie and rape her repeatedly. So by the time your head hits the pillow at night, it is fully capable for a child trafficking victim to have had 12 sexual encounters, 4 beatings, been shot up with heroin, or sold at auction, and the day's just getting started. Don't leave here this weekend and forget them. Say their names. They could be your daughters, your granddaughters, your sisters, your nieces. So like I said before, my PowerPoint slide said, kids are commodities, whether we'd like to acknowledge it or not. Does anyone here know what the definition of a commodity is? Can any of you tell me? Come on now, we gotta make this fun. Anyone know what a commodity is? Something that has value. Anyone else? No? All right. We have to engage, or y'all gonna start crying, then I'm gonna start crying, and it's not gonna be good, okay? According to Webster, a commodity is a raw material or primary agricultural product that can be bought and sold. A raw material that can be bought and sold. Kids are commodities to some sick individuals. How can I stand up here and tell you that with such confidence? Because my name is Eliana Brooks, and I'm a 15-year trafficking survivor, and I will not be quiet so that all of you can remain comfortable. The story I told you about Belle, she was a client, but every other instance I gave you is my story, my life that I lived. My brother picked me up to drink out of a broken pipe. Pat bought meat at auction. I am your daughter. I'm your granddaughter. I'm your niece. I'm your sister. I am not a conspiracy. During the 2020 presidential elections, we heard a lot of talk about the border crisis and kids being kept in cages. President Trump was painted to be a monster because of kids in cages at the border, kids that were in cages to be protected while our previous administration determined who was bringing them here. And there are lots of rumors now with our current administration about kids in cages, but I can assure you it's not for the same reason. You see, kids in cages at closed, protected borders are safe kids. With immigration policies and closed borders, I would have never lived the life that I lived. Kids in cages are safe kids, they're protected kids, and I would have rather spent my life in a cage than most places that I spent the first 17 years of my life. See, I was brought across our unprotected southern borders by coyotes when I was less than 3 years old, and no one stopped them. No one did a DNA test to make sure that that man or woman that brought me here was related to me. Healing has been a journey beyond anything you can imagine, but thanks to my new parents, my mom, who's here today, and countless others that never give up on me, I can stand here today and talk to you about this with utmost confidence. I serve as the program director at Warrior Bride Ministries in Marietta, Georgia, a nonprofit dedicated to the healing, deliverance, and integration of trauma survivors. My story of freedom and wholeness is the foundation of many programs that we implement with our clients. So there are a few things that I am qualified to talk to you about today that we're going to cover rather quickly. I'd love for you to go online, attend one of our rallies, hear what we're doing to combat this. But today I want to talk to you about 3 things. There is a widespread, strategic, criminal network selling children in the United States. Kids are indeed commodities. An elite pedophile ring, satanic ritual abuse, celebrity involvement, and government cover-up go way beyond any meme that you've shared on Facebook. It's a conspiracy. You see, when coyotes brought me here with my sister and brother, we were sold to a cult called The Way International that specializes in trafficking children under the guise of pseudo-Christianity, what the world would call satanic ritual abuse. I was raised in a basement. I was denied basic food, water, and shelter, or love with 8 other kids. And when I tell you my life is good now, I'm serious, because of those 9 kids, I'm the only one that's not dead. Except for one other, Ryan. He's hospitalized with permanent brain damage because I remember the night that I heard his skull crack on a concrete basement floor in the dark, echoed by muffled sobs of other kids who thought that they might be next. Don't cry, or I'll make it hurt more is probably the most prevalent phrase from my childhood, and it'll come in handy today, because as long as y'all don't cry, I won't cry. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is the fact that child trafficking is a strategic criminal network, organized crime. But I have a question first. Where is the richest, whitest guy here? I can say that, right? Because we can't play a race card. Where's Mark Lynch? Is Mark here? I can't see you. No? There we go. There we go. Mark, I have a question for you. According to Google, we know how trustworthy they are. The people trafficking kids are middle-aged white men in suburbia with lots of money. So that's why I had to find you. Where do I sell a kid? Where do I sell him? You don't know? You're supposed to know. That's what Google says, right? I have 2 kids I have to sell. Mark, where do I sell them? They put their picture up for you? They're not really for sale. It's okay. You're good. I like to put the picture of my kids up because, well, they're cute, for starters. Can't you tell they look like me? And they're good kids. They had to put up with a lot of junk. There they are. They had to put up with a lot of junk while mommy healed. So here's the thing. Mark's the richest, whitest guy here, right? He's from, no? It might be someone else. Someone else know where I can sell a kid? Messing up my speech. It's all good. No. But if he doesn't know where to sell a kid, then how's this actually work? Because that's what Google said. Can anyone tell me the definition of organized crime? Thank you. Webster's definition, my bad. What is organized crime? Yes. The definition is criminal activities that are planned and controlled by powerful groups, the government, and carried out on a large scale. I'm more of a visual person, so Andrew, we're going to flip through these slides that show people what organized crime is. So up first we have The Godfather. Mafia, mafia, right? Next one. Oh shit, how'd that get in there? Sorry, next. Nothing says organized crime like a gang, right? The Bloods, the Crips, okay. Next. Man, I'd really need to double check my slides. I'm sorry. Mom, you should check these before I send them out. All right, who do we got next? Oh, we skipped right to the big guns, right? The royal family. How about this next one? Oh, anyone know what this is? This is the celebrities that happened to fly to Epstein Island. And just remember, in case you didn't know, for our next slide, Epstein didn't kill himself. Moving on. Let's get back to how do kids actually become trafficking victims? Are people really snatching your kids off the street? Yeah, I mean, people do kidnap kids. Please keep them safe at all times, but most of those kidnapping incidents are isolated incidents. They're not trafficking related. That's too dangerous for organized crime. If someone took my kids, could you imagine? They're cute. Someone might want to take them, but nothing is worse than a fierce mama bear frantically looking for their child. That's not to say it never happens, but it's not the norm, because if you kidnapped a kid, Mark, where would you sell them? We don't know, right? Child sex trafficking is a structured, organized crime ring in the United States and other countries, with victims being sold by their impoverished family in a third world country in exchange for a few dollars and the promise of a better life for their children. I was brought here illegally from Central America, like I said, but a good majority of these kids are American children being trafficking, or parents that live in addiction who need a fix. This happens more than we'd like to think about it, but believe it or not, there are moms out there who will sell their babies for a crack rock. Then we have kids in foster care who don't have families or parents that are actively monitoring or fighting for them. This is actually how I came to meet Jeff and Sarah. One of our clients came to live on our couch because there was no place for her. She jumped out of a car in Maine in February on Super Bowl Sunday and ran from her traffickers. Luckily, we were able to get her there. She was originally from South Carolina, but when she entered foster care at the age of 4, the foster care system began to traffic her because no one was fighting for her. Her name was Jennifer. I want you to know her name. We also have young teens that are lured away by Romeo pimps on Instagram. My mom got a message a few months ago from a family whose daughter was lured off to California to pursue a dream that ended up in trafficking and satanic ritual abuse. Her name was Tiffany. Know her name. But here's one that not many people think about. multi-generational family trafficking. When young girls who are sold into trafficking at 3 or 4 years old grow up in trafficking rings and naturally get pregnant at 12 or 13, and they have a baby that's sold for the first time at few days old, because believe it or not, people like to have sex with newborns, if you want to call them that. We have 2 incoming to our program next week. Mom is 30, and the kid is the product of satanic ritual abuse. Mom is a satanic ritual abuse survivor. I want you to say their names, Elizabeth and Graceland. And then we have the more evil side of satanic ritual abuse, where girls are kept as breeders. You see, after a failed home abortion that left me terribly sick from a coat hanger being taped to the inside of my thighs, I was sick with fever and hallucinating from infection. I delivered my first child at 12 years old, completely alone and not knowing what my body was supposed to do or having the capacity to understand what was happening. I know that exhausted from the experience and in pain, I still had more motherly instinct than my maternal biological mother ever had. Because as I laid there on a concrete floor in a pool of blood, I counted his toes. I loved him. Fortunately for him, and less fortunately for me, my abusers came and took him and sacrificed him a few short days later in a satanic ritual, because I was what they call a breeder. These are the things that the media doesn't tell you about. They don't highlight. These are the victims that they don't talk about, that no one wants to talk about. Yet according to Google, this is a conspiracy, satanic panic, QAnon nonsense. Yet this is my life that I lived every moment of one time, physically and mentally, many, many times over again. Don't leave here and forget. I want you to know their names: Belle, Jennifer, Tiffany, Elizabeth, Graceland, Eliana. Say my name. Know who I am. I will not be quiet so that you can be comfortable. In fact, I'm going to make you uncomfortable enough to want to do something about it. So let's talk about numbers again, can we? Kids are commodities, but how much is a child really worth? Any normal human being would say that's easy. Kids are priceless. Well, I'll agree with that. The fact is, kids do have a price tag. I lived my entire life with a price tag that someone else put on me. Like I said, the U.S. State Department says a child can be sold for sex up to 20 times in a day. In 2019, one trafficker in Atlanta could make $32,000 a week per child. So let's do that math. $32,000 divided by 7 is $4,571 a day. Divide that by 20. That's $228 for an encounter. Is that what I'm worth? That's what one kid was worth to one sick man or woman. But I was trafficked 20 years ago, and I'm not any good at inflation or numbers, really, and I'm not going to pretend to be. But what does that mean I was worth? $150? How would you feel if you lived your entire life with a price tag on your body? You're worth $200. You're cute and skinny with blonde hair. I'll give you $350. You back there? $1.75. Sorry. These kids live every day with a price tag on their body. I had a price tag on mine long after I ever left the confines of that basement or the everyday life of being trafficked. How could I mentally process my worth as a woman, as a business owner, as a human, when someone else had always determined my value? And it took a lot of healing to get to a place where I could understand that I named my value, even though other people had named their price or took what they wanted, or worse, in my young, sick, twisted mind, that I had sold myself. You see, I have a very vivid memory of being maybe 7 years old and walking into a trap house. Do y'all know what a trap house is? It's a place where people go to get high and pass out and all of that. I was with my uncle. You see, anytime I wasn't being sold or passed around, you could usually find me assisting him with a drug deal. You know, in recent years, we've talked about a heroin epidemic, but I knew more about heroin at 7 than most people will ever know in their life. I knew exactly how it was packaged and how much it was worth. I also knew the sweet, warm rush of opiates pumping through your system that an adult shot up in an inconspicuous place like between your toes. So as I'm walking into this trap house, I'm only about this big, right? I note the familiar smell of urine and vomit, and my short legs can barely step over the adults that are passed out all over the floor. You guys are getting a good picture, right? So as we enter the kitchen, one of my uncle's friends is sitting on the counter eating a slice of pizza. I recognized him, and I knew that he was the one that was going to get the drugs. You see, little girls have special places we can hide drugs, and we can carry them for people. And I knew that in him retrieving those drugs, he would do whatever he wanted to my body. And I also knew that if I didn't fight too much, I could have some pizza. And it had been a long time since I had eaten, and it had been even longer since my brother had eaten. And if I were sneaky enough, maybe I could slip some in my panties to take back to him. For him, it was completely worth it. Before working through my own healing at Warrior Bride Ministries, I would have told you that I was a prostitute, a whore. At 7 years old, I mentally sold myself for a slice of pizza, really a half a slice, because the rest was for my baby brother. He needed to eat too. The reality is, I lived my life with a price tag. And there are thousands of kids that still wear one today. So at $32,000 a week a kid in Atlanta, that's $128,000 a month. That would pay off some of your houses. That's $1.664 million a year. Most kids are trafficked from 3 to 4 years old to 15 or 17 years old when they run or are killed. That's on average 12 years. The life of a child sex trafficking victim is $19.968 million. Child trafficking is a $150 billion a year industry. What's the difference between child trafficking and gun trading and drugs? Children are reusable commodities that you can have sex with over and over again. If the past 15 months have taught you anything, it's that we can absolutely trust unequivocally the United States government, right? No? Because there's no agenda there ever. So let's talk about the real conspiracy. We did the math, $20 million for the life of a child sex trafficking victim. How does that compare to commodities today? When I sent this PowerPoint on May 26th, I got you some numbers. Gold was $1,903 an ounce. Crude oil was $68.76 a barrel. Wheat was at $205 a bushel, and feeder cattle $1.37 a pound. How many times can you sell a tank of gas? How many times can you eat a steak? Just once, right? But you can have sex with a kid multiple times. What drives the price of commodities? Anyone know? Supply and demand. That's why in Biden's America, we continue to eliminate the supply chain that drives up prices towards a greater goal of socialism, complete government dependence, and complete government control. John, if he's in here, he's going to talk to you tomorrow about socialism. I won't take too much time, but that's your real conspiracy. The government is able to manipulate the price of a commodity by passing a bill. If you weren't paying close attention, though, you probably missed the biggest commodity price manipulation in the last 4 years. Maybe you didn't catch it. Why was it so important in his first month of office to reopen the borders and allow millions of illegal immigrants to pour into our country? Why was that so important in the midst of a pandemic to bring more people in to care for? Commodity manipulation, because maybe the cost of having sex with a kid was getting a little too high. Supply and demand. With Trump administration and their tireless efforts to combat human trafficking, thousands of kids have been rescued, so the cost of kids obviously has to increase. Supply and demand, or the access to kids has to increase, so open the border. One or the other. It has never been a humanitarian effort in the Biden administration. It's a numbers game amongst other things. Under the Trump administration, with closed borders, cutting off a steady supply of victims, which drove up the price to have sex with a kid, with the lack of supply and a steady increasing demand, the need for access to more and more victims was critical. Kids are commodities, and that is your conspiracy. I have one last question before we wrap this up. Can anyone tell me the definition of commodity manipulation? No? Gaining a dominant position in the derivatives market and gaining a dominant position in the controlling flow of physical commodities. A dominant position in the derivatives market, which is the financial instruments like future contracts or options. Well, your government has that. And a dominant position in controlling the flow of the physical commodities by opening the borders. Also check. So they sit in a perfect position to manipulate commodity pricing, whether it be gold and silver or children. That's why we've seen in Biden's first roughly 150 days of destruction that he stopped the Dakota Access Pipeline. We have the hack from Russia, which contributed to the cost of everything from gas and lumber and food to increase. Did you know that they actually have a playbook for this? I'm sure you've heard of Goldman and Sachs. They give you a brief overview on how their companies actually teach commodities market manipulation and employee training. Today's lesson class is how Goldman and Sachs and other banking behemoths in the government write laws that protect the political class. Most Americans operate under this faulty premise that the new disclosure laws passed in 2007 have made things more transparent. But did you know there are currently 27 warehouses owned by Goldman and Sachs in Detroit? They store aluminum for 18 months to market or manufacture. They collect the rent on it, but they drive up the supply. They drive up the price by limiting the supply, and we incur that pricing. It's akin to a grocery store hoarding all the lemons and then forcing local lemonade stands to charge us more for homemade beverages. That's taken from an investment website, but we can easily apply that to kids. Our previous administration started rescuing kids and putting them where they could to keep them safe. They didn't profit. However, just like aluminum, anything those kids were attached to or used for, the price now increases. Organs on the black market, sex with children, even epinephrine. We don't have time to go down that rabbit hole, but research, not Google, epinephrine and see what happens when it's left in the sun. Why Obama made an EpiPen $400 and Trump made it $10 and Biden changed it back to $400. I'll give you a hint. When you leave EpiPen in the sun, it turns to adrenochrome. All it took was a couple of executive orders in his first 100 days to open borders and increase the number of kids who can be brought by each adult, halt border wall construction, and undo a 2018 executive order that sought to reunite parents at the border. You know, kids in cages. And that's exactly why when you Google child trafficking, they want you to think that nothing happened. They want you to believe that this is a conspiracy to cover up their need for power and control over innocent lives. And Facebook posts and memes don't even begin to address how deep child trafficking goes. You see, working at Warrior Bride Ministries, we have kids that have been abused by these people, young, innocent kids that have no political agenda, who recognize their abusers on TV and in print, especially during election year. What reason would a 4-year-old who spent the majority of his life being trafficked have to falsely accuse a politician as someone who hurt them? Say his name, it's Jeffrey, remember him. You see, child trafficking victims are never supposed to make it out alive because it's not about sex with kids, it's about a power trip. Survivors know secrets that can destroy people in high places. I can stand up here and tell you story after story that will make your skin crawl because it was never supposed to be uttered. I told you I'm one of 9 from a trafficking ring that lived to tell about it. The others were murdered, like my twin sister Ruby, OD'd like my cousin Rihanna, sacrificed for organs and adrenochrome, or like my brother, committed suicide. Because the reality of our life, of our story, is even if we make it out, we are a conspiracy to the world. I remember getting the phone call when my brother committed suicide. He was in the hospital and on life support. My entire world crumbled. He was all I had left, my only connection to the past, to who I was, to where I came from. Our trauma was shared and mutual. He understood because he lived it too. You see, he was my first consensual sexual encounter that I had. I was 6 years old and he was 5 when some men purchased us and wanted to make a pornographic movie featuring the two of us. And I was much more willing to have sex with my brother than with them. And the guilt was heavy when I got that phone call, you see, because I introduced my baby brother to the idea of suicide. I was 12 and he was 11 the first time that we attempted suicide. We hung ourselves from that same leaky pipe that I told you about, and it broke. Boy, that was a beating. One that he took the brunt of because he always tried to protect me. He loved me better than I deserved to be loved. And after 2 other attempted suicide attempts together, we made a suicide pact that if one of us killed ourselves, the other one would follow suit, and our secrets would die with us, and no one would ever hear these stories. So here I am, holding this phone with the hospital, and the reality hits me of a promise I made to him. And I was a single mom with those 2 beautiful babies that I showed you, and I was so broken and so brainwashed from 15 years of being abused that I chose to unsuccessfully attempt to make good on that suicide pact and keep my promise to him instead of my kids. I want you to know his name. His name was Devin Jamal, and I was never rescued. I know some of you have this question, so I'll address it now. When I was 17 years old, I found myself in this unique position where I was in a hospital, and due to circumstances, the hospital was shielding me from my abusers, and there was this moment, this critical moment where the doctor said, "I'll be back after you change." And I seized that opportunity to run. After 15 years, in the middle of November in Pennsylvania, I remember running barefoot down a sidewalk, looking at the ground and watching blood drip out of my body, and I could feel the cold cement under my feet. I had no shoes on. And the pain of broken bones that begged me to stop going, and the sound of hospital personnel yelling behind me, and a still small voice inside that begged me to keep going. And I kept going, and I got away physically. You see, you never really completely get away until you heal. You live inside a mental prison of trafficking until someone helps you break free, and that's what Warrior Bride did for me, and we aim to do every day. We help them get free after they are free. That is why I will not be quiet, so you can be comfortable, and I will not lessen my story to protect governmental officials, celebrities, or deep state cabal. Every single time I open my mouth, I put my family that chose me, I didn't choose them, at risk. But the more times I open my mouth, the more truth is known, and I get one step closer to safety, because eventually enough people will know who I am that killing me is no longer an option. And until then, we prayerfully continue the work that we do, because every child deserves freedom. Say their names: Belle, Jennifer, Tiffany, Elizabeth, Gracelyn, Jeffrey, Ruby, Rhiannon, Devin, Eliana. Say my name, because kids are commodities. It really is a conspiracy. It's one that I lived for 15 years, and now I work tirelessly to combat and represent. Warrior Bride Ministries has a community to help these kids heal and be made whole. We'd love to share it with you if you stop by our table. But because of this, we'll always have a target on our back. There's one thing I want you to remember: not every conspiracy is a theory. Thank you.
Eliana Brooks, everybody. Jeff and Sarah Mag, are you here? Jeff and Sarah, come on up here. Jeff and Sarah. About 2 months ago, Jeff said, Presley, I want you to come to a meeting. I want you to hear this young lady. They crammed us into a hot room at a restaurant. Remember that? And Eliana told her story, and it was so compelling. Come on up, come around here. I want to thank Jeff and Sarah for introducing all of us to Eliana, and they're the reason she's here. They sponsored her, warriorbrideministries.com. Please go there. Go to her table. And Eliana, I can remember a couple of years ago, I was over in the White Horse Road area, and I had to stop by a QT because I had to go to the potty. And I was in a hurry, but there was a Hispanic man, looked like he was walking his daughter in. But he had a hold of her wrist, and she was in a foul mood. And I went in, and I used the restroom, and I came out, and I got something to nibble on and to drink. And I saw that man handing her to another man in a white van on the other side of the parking lot. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, I think I just saw child sex trafficking take place. I ran out and I tried to get the tag of the van, and it was too late. I just couldn't read it. Ladies and gentlemen, we live here in Greenville, South Carolina, but I don't care where you live in this country or around the world. This is a very real scourge. Our good friend Lynn Wood talks about it all the time. It is, besides abortion, it is the other sin that we have in this country. So Eliana, we're very proud of you. Jeff and Sarah, thank you so much. You want to say anything, Jeff?
I've got too much snot running out my nose right now, probably like all you guys, but I think, God brings things at the right time for the right purpose, and I believe that fully. When we met Eliana, it was a deal that we had always wanted to invest into human trafficking because it was a passion of ours for really a long time. We've talked about it, but really had no way to get ourselves injected into that arena until we met Eliana. And we spent a short time together, and we realized that, man, it's way deeper than I ever imagined. And we drove to Atlanta to meet her and to meet her mom, and we came back changed. We came back with a new passion. We've got some plans and goals long term to be able to really invest into Eliana's ministry, and we feel that anybody who does invest into that ministry, they're going to be very, very well pleased with what they see as a result and what they're doing as a ministry to help what I think is the most despicable industry that is out there, period, bar none. And but you look anytime you invest time, effort, energy into a ministry, I know how that is. I don't trust a lot of them, honestly. I don't trust a lot of churches. I don't trust a lot of ministries because I think they abuse people's money that people give in some cases. And but I can tell you it's fertile soil given to their ministry because they do 100% of everything. They don't do it for the money. They do it because it's the right thing to do. So anyway, with all that, it's great to be here. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Sarah. And I think Don and Donna needed to say something to you, Eliana.
Cowboy logic, man. Had to throw you guys in there.
Her name is Eliana, and she is a survivor. Say her name. Eliana. Her name is Eliana, and she is a survivor. Say her name like you mean it.
Eliana. Wow. WarriorBrideMinistries.com, folks. WarriorBrideMinistries.com. Wow. Makes you think.
How many of you are going to leave here changed people?
Hard to see, but I've seen a lot of hands. How do you follow that unless you're a thug? Well, this next guy is a thug.
Eliana, you've left us absolutely speechless, my dear.
I'm sorry, I'm moving on here.
Her name is Eliana. She's a survivor. Say her name. Thank you. All right. Regroup, Donna.
Yeah. Well, I was saying that only a thug could follow that one up.
Did we
But-
have one?
Yes, we do.
Did we find? Is there a thug in the house?
Yes, there is a thug. And those
We
of
think
you
we
who
found
live
a
in the low
thug.
country know who we're talking about. I'm talking about Chad Caton. Chad is a retired firefighter, a Navy Seabee veteran. He has been making waves in Horry County. He's focused on the entrenched corruption of local government. Man, there's so much to work with in that. Corruption of local government, helping to turn the tide in several elections. The local swamp dubbed him a thug. You know, whatever they call you is what they really are themselves. And you got to wear that as a badge of courage, which he does. He says that he has worn that proudly as a badge of honor. He constantly recruits more fired-up patriots to be his thug army. Apparently, that's a big T-shirt around here, Thug Army. His motto is show up, stand up, speak up. Show up, stand up, and speak up. It's your republic. Fight for it. Chad Caton, the Thug Army, and your Second Amendment rights. Everybody, Mr. Chad Caton.
Wow, ladies and gentlemen, Eliana got me. I'm proud to be a thug because of people like Miss Eliana. I became a CB, serve my country. I became a firefighter to continue to stand up for those that could not stand up for themselves. I came to talk about the Second Amendment, and I will, because guns are great. But Eliana did something for us all today, and I hope the rest of you can feel exactly what I am. And you're talking to an alpha male that loves his guns, loves a good piece of steak, and will not back down from anything, because the only thing I fear is my wife and the Lord our God. My wife is a redheaded Italian that can tan. That's a scary thing. I became a thug and became that guy that said, I'm not going to do email campaigns. I love blowing up a cell phone of a councilman every once in a while. Hey, Dennis DiSabato. But people like Eliana need people like us to come together and recognize the ugly of our country and the ugly of this world so that we can stand with her. So there is not another Eliana. I want to bring her up one more time. Your strength is more. That's why the Second Amendment is so important. It stands for something. Her strength is way more than any gun, any army, any thugs. The strength of what she represents is exactly why we hold our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, and our way of life in this country at such a high standard. I have never been prouder to meet somebody. And I want you to have my number. And I got some dudes. We can help you whatever you need. I got Thug Army Patriots are out there, and I think we might get some more tonight. What if I do this right, all right? I got to stop crying, though. Let's do this. Thank you so much.
You know what? We got some Sniper Division hats out on their table.
Hey, Sniper Division hats. I like it. I like it. All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I am the Second Amendment guy. I don't have a pair of suspenders on right now and a yellow hat. That's Jerry Wayne that's in your program. He's a little skinnier, too. Jerry Wayne is my partner, business partner. I had a radio show in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and a podcast. After we stood up to our county council for firefighters